Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us, folks. Welcome to the MMA Sucka podcast. My name's Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the one and only Frazer Krohn. Frazer, what's going on today?
All the reviewing from the past weekend is done. We
Hmm.
covered PFL, Bellator, WWE and UFC, Joshua versus Franklin. Now
Yep.
we're going full steam ahead. UFC 287. We sprinkle a little bit of PFL too in there, but
Yep.
let's be honest, it's UFC 287 fight week.
Absolutely, and let's jump right into it. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya going in for their fourth bout. It's such a weird thing to square up because if you want to do tape study on these two, there's hours of it. There's so much of these two directly fighting each other across various sports and across the, I don't know, 10 rounds, 12 rounds that they fought already. Israel Adesanya has won all but two of them, really. Like, it's just, even the first fight where Alex Pereira had won, it wasn't that good of a performance from him. The next fight, he was losing until he knocked him out. The UFC fight, he was losing until he knocked him out. And this fight, it makes it so hard to square up of like, yeah, on paper, I should be picking Israel Adesanya. We should all be picking Israel Adesanya. That's a smart pick. But what if Alex Pereira punches him in the face? Go on. I don't know what to make of it.
I think, it's strange for us to have. This is now the second sort of pay-per-view in a row where we haven't been able to get into a technical breakdown on the podcast
Yeah.
pre-fight, because the last pay-per-view, obviously UFC 286, was Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman, and we said, look, we can't add anything more to the podcast that we did.
Yeah.
In that case, it was August. In this situation, we can't. Personally, I don't think I can add any more to what I said, and you said it in last November when they first fought. I don't think it's a question of a technical breakdown, or is he better at doing this? Alex is better at doing this.
Yeah.
Is he needs to do this? Alex needs to do this. It's more. There's so many questions to be asked about this fourth. Let's not forget. Like, you just
Yeah.
want to reiterate, it's the fourth time these guys have fought, and the on paper, if you look at the stats, if you watch the fights, the better guy has lost
Yeah.
three times.
Yeah, I know.
The better guy has lost three times. How, I've got an article coming out later today on three things. I didn't do a keys to victory because, like I say, I can't add much more to what I
No.
put. How does Alex Pereira upset Israel Adesanya? I'll tweet that out and from the MMA Soccer Twitter account. That was from November. So the article that I've written this week is a bit of a preview to the main event. Is just three things to look out for during fight week and on fight night. And one of the three things, a little spoiler here to the article, is Israel Adesanya's mentality. This guy is 0-3,
Yeah.
having suffered two finish losses to Alex Pereira, a guy who doesn't have the kickboxing experience that Israel Adesanya does as far as numbers, doesn't have the MMA experience as Israel Adesanya does as far as numbers. And yet, is he just Israel Adesanya's kryptonite? Is he just
Yeah.
better than Israel Adesanya? How does Israel Adesanya sort of, you know, deal with that in his head? Does he swallow his pride and does he wrestle? I think we could see him wrestle in this one, but who know, quite literally, who knows?
Yep.
I think it must be, when Israel Adesanya stood opposite Alex Pereira I'm assuming they might do a press conference if Jorge Masvidal's there. They've got to do a press conference. I imagine this week. I haven't seen anything, but at weigh-ins when they see each other in the fighter hotel on fight night, when Israel Adesanya stands across from Alex Pereira, is he scared? Let's be honest. Alex Pereira is a scary guy. He's without a doubt the bigger guy.
Yeah.
Does he stand across and think, look, you've got my number.
Yeah.
You can, I know that you can catch me. I've got to stay switched on my bike for 25 hard minutes. And for Alex Pereira, does he think, right, I've knocked you out twice. I've knocked you out in kickboxing. I've now
Yeah.
knocked you out in MMA. I'm the bigger guy. I'm the bigger puncher. I know you can hurt me like you did at the end of the first round, but I only need, I came back. I came back and knocked you out. I only need one shot to hurt you, which is what we saw. Izzy, that wasn't, yes, it was a TKO on the feet. I think it was a good stoppage. I've seen some people think it was an early stoppage. I think it was a good
It
stoppage.
was
You
fine.
don't need to see Izzy laid out completely. I think it's a fine stoppage. But Alex Pereira didn't. It's not like it was an accumulation of a lot of punches. Yes, it was a TKO. That's where the finish came from. But he hurt Izzy with just a one punch, and it was the Alex Pereira punch. It was the left hook that hurt Izzy. So I
Yeah.
think there's going to be for me, it's a lot of looking into Israel Adesanya's mentality this week to see how this fight might go. And I don't think I'll put my pick in until Saturday morning. I want to see the face off. I want to see how both guys look on the scale,
Yeah.
because that's a conversation in itself that we'll discuss later on.
Well, yeah, I think the mentality is the biggest question because that's the biggest thing that someone can change or work towards is what kind of mental state is someone like Israel Adesanya coming in with? Because I think Alex Pereira is going to be uber confident coming into this fight. He struggled round over round and still won. I think he's going to be feeling, and all the stories from Glover of like, yeah, Alex keeps coming to my house and then he'll put on the fight. And every interview, he's like, yeah, that's my favorite knockout. That's my favorite fight. He's talking about it. He loves it. I think he's going to be so confident. But Israel Adesanya, to put it into perspective, between professional boxing, MMA, and kickboxing, he's had 111 bouts. He's only ever been knocked out twice, both to Alex Pereira. That's a scary feat to have. So, and here's the struggle. If you pressure Alex Pereira, you're playing into his counterpuncher game. If you act conservatively, you're giving him lots of time to figure out where to land that bomb, as we saw in the previous few bouts. You give him time to work, he'll find the space. If you work for takedowns, I'm not really sure if Israel has those skills. We haven't really seen him do it. But like there's almost a no-win situation from Israel of like if you don't pressure him, he'll find a spot. If you pressure him, he'll definitely find the mark. What's the path to victory for an Israel Adesanya here?
It's really difficult. I think you did allude to, and you mentioned it there, the wrestling.
Yeah,
Alex Pereira, I genuinely believe win or lose is Alex Pereira's last fight at 185. He's
yeah,
too big to keep on making 185, and that jump up to 205. I think he'll be the bigger 205er in there if he faces the current champion Jamala Hill. I think he'll be the bigger guy in there.
yeah.
Because he's such a big guy. That means he cuts a lot of weight, which means that cardio may take a little bit of a hit. Now, if Israel Adesanya can, he landed the takedown in the last fight, but it wasn't a wrestling style takedown. It was a reactionary takedown. He caught the kick of Alex Pereira, sort of reaped the leg, countered Alex Pereira's potential hip throw, and spun him around, took him over his standing leg, and managed to control him for the majority of the round, winning the round with relative ease. If I'm Israel Adesanya, I look for the path of least resistance, which is the takedown. With that being said, Alex Pereira is so much bigger. I was listening to Dan Hardy and Veronica Macedo's podcast this morning, and they were saying, look, Israel Adesanya is the better wrestler out of the two, but he's not such a better wrestler that the kind of size of Pereira doesn't play a factor. If this was Alex Pereira versus, let's for argument's sake, let's say Islam Makhachev versus Alex Pereira, both at the same weight. Islam Makhachev's wrestling skills are so superior to Alex Pereira's that even with a size advantage, Alex Pereira, would still get taken down. Now, despite the fact he's got not as good wrestling skills as Izzy, I still think that size advantage plays such a big factor because there's a smaller gap in between, the size of Pereira and the wrestling, the gap in ability that Israel Adesanya holds over him. I think is too small.
Mm-hmm.
The size of Pereira makes Israel Adesanya's better wrestling skills diminish ever so slightly because he can just muscle out of things. And for me, Israel Adesanya, he's taken this fight 5 months, 4.5 months since their last fight. That's not enough time to put on any size. Israel Adesanya won't come into this fight, 195, 200. Alex Pereira will probably come in 205, 210. In all seriousness, I think he'll put on a lot of weight after weigh-ins. And that play, you can see when these two guys squared off even at the ceremonial weigh-ins, Alex Pereira looks humongous in comparison to Israel Adesanya. And I think that kind of played out, in the clinches in the first fight, Alex Pereira, such a bigger guy. The shots that Israel Adesanya landed didn't, apart from that one at the end of the first round, and, let's not forget he was winning the fight, but apart from that shot at the end of the first round, he didn't hurt Pereira at any time. Pereira's ability to check the leg kick off Adesanya, I think, changed the fight massively. Obviously in the fifth round, it sort of caused him to stumble back, but I've watched it a couple of times in slow-mo. Mm-hmm. He does check the leg kick, but Adesanya's leg sort of crosses over his other leg and he falls backwards. He rolls out of it and he gets straight back up to his feet. So I don't think that was like an injury kind of thing.
Mhm.
But how, we spoke about Anthony Joshua, how Anthony Joshua set things up off the jab. He had a really effective jab this weekend.
Mhm.
Israel Adesanya doesn't have the most effective jab in the world, but he's got an effective leg kick, which he then looks to set up his combinations from. If that leg kick's being checked, you can't then go into your further combination. So it's throwing the leg kick, having it checked, right? Okay, now I need to reset again.
Mhm.
Previously, it was throw the leg kick. It's not, against Jared Cannonier, throw the leg kick, jab, right hand, throw the leg kick, switch kick to the body. If the leg kick's being checked, he has to reset every time,
Mhm.
as well as the fact that you've got someone like Alex Pereira checking your leg kick, it's going to hurt. So I think the leg kick, the leg checking ability of Alex Pereira. We saw Jan Blachowicz do it against Israel Adesanya. Like, Jan Blachowicz is one of the best checkers of leg kicks in the game,
Yeah.
and obviously Adesanya lost that one, and it's going to be tough for him to really get his game going if he can't land the leg kick. I think the inside leg kick may be a better route to go down for Adesanya because Alex Pereira, he was effective at getting the leg up and out of the way, but if he's getting the leg up and out of the way for the inside leg kick, it's still hitting the meaty part of the calf. Or going slightly higher on there's no danger of Alex Pereira taking Israel Adesanya down to the ground. So going higher, going on the thigh, sort of the whole Jose Aldo Uriah Faber kind of leg kick, rather than looking to go to the low calf kick. Arguably a safer bet for Adesanya because it's harder to check those leg kicks, as well as there being no danger of the takedown. I think Israel Adesanya should maybe look at switching things up, going a little bit higher with the leg kick. He'd probably have more success.
Yeah, and I've seen some people online break down that not just going higher with the leg kicks, but like body teeps and body kicks may be the key for Israel Adesanya here. Thing is, like, I can't break down and talk about things that I haven't seen. Like, theoretically, yeah, he could do that a bunch. I just don't think I've ever seen him do it to anyone. Like, maybe that would work. I don't entirely know. But yeah, seeing him going upper thigh, the thing is, like, he's just got to show different looks in this case. He's really got to try some different things because I think ultimately, based on what we've seen, if he plays his usual game, the game that he had against Jared Kennedy or Marvin Vittori, his usual game, he's going to get knocked out again.
Yeah,
And
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah, go ahead.
it's hard to argue with that at all. I think we've kind of seen now that Alex Pereira is the better fighter,
Mhm.
but this is MMA. The path of least resistance for Izzy is to wrestle.
Yeah, it sucks.
Does he want to get in? Can he pressure Alex Pereira enough to the point where he can then get a clinch? I don't see Izzy shooting for a single leg or shooting for a double leg. I think if he gets a takedown, it's going to be a trip in the clinch.
Yeah.
But does he want to enter that zone with Alex Pereira, who, let's be honest, he's got short range power, he's got long range power, he's dangerous in the clinch,
Yep.
and he does train with Glover Teixeira. He will be training his takedown defense. So if does Izzy want to kind of you know wear himself out by looking to take Pereira down? I'm not sure that he does.
Yeah. And I don't entirely know. And what you were talking about with the size, like, it sounds almost like the lack of breakdown just to say, like, oh, one guy's bigger. But no, it's true. Of, like, even in jujitsu, they'll say one belt rank is equal to a 10 kilogram advantage. Like, honestly, even professional jujitsu players will say, like, yeah, size, he was bigger. That's why I lost. Size makes a massive difference. But yeah, I don't. Final thoughts on it. I'm gonna pick Alex Pereira via knockout. I don't have anything else to add on it. Like, yeah, what else do you see?
Yeah, again, I think I'm gonna have to wait until this weekend to see because for Israel Adesanya, there's so much pressure on him. He
Yeah.
can't do the flash walkouts. He can't speak like he does if he's coming off the back of two knockout losses. So there's so much pressure on Israel Adesanya. For Alex Pereira, is for me, it's how he looks on the scale on Friday. Supposedly he's been cutting weight for 2 weeks, which is not so sure I believe that. Whether that's just a little tactic to get in the head of Adesanya, I'm not so sure. But I'm probably gonna pick Alex Pereira again, like yourself, by knockout,
Yeah.
or Israel Adesanya
Oh,
by or Israel Adesanya by a wide victory. And I think it might look like Paul Daly versus MVP, two really good
oh,
strikers that are awful at rest, or not awful, but have very rudimentary wrestling skills. And it's like I say, path to least resistance for Israel Adesanya.
yeah.
Take Alex Pereira down, dominate him on the floor, tire him out. he doesn't finish Alex Pereira unless he clips him early. But I think Alex Pereira may look to jump on Adesanya within the first 2 rounds and look to get him out of there, close that chapter of Pereira Adesanya for good, and then move up to 205 and look to take on Jamal Hill.
I think Alex Pereira would have more success at 205. Well, I don't know. Middleweight is very thin in terms of who's there. Obviously, you have the Robert Whitaker is quite good, but then the next contender is Sean Strickland. Man, this division's not thick anymore. But yeah, light heavyweight is somehow weaker than that. So I think you might have more success at light heavyweight. But let's move down to the next fight: Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, top-ranked welterweight, dangerous, one of the all-time sorry, not all time. He's a world jiu-jitsu champion, been developing his striking over time, dropped both Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman in his fights, versus Jorge Masvidal, who is a longtime staple of MMA, started in Kimbo's backyard, fought in the Strikeforce circuit, has made a name for himself in the last few years, been in court battles. I don't know. I don't know what else to add on for Jorge Masvidal. I will give that he is in a must-win situation here, and I think his back is against the wall, but I actually don't think he's going to get it done. I think this is a great fight for Gilbert Burns to really put on display his skills on the feet and on the ground. Jorge Masvidal's body kicks I don't think will be enough, but what do you think?
No, I completely agree with you, and
Yeah,
it's unfortunate because I think I kind of want a Jorge Masvidal win because I want Leon to be able to get that one back.
yeah,
But like I just don't see it happening. I just think Gilbert's too good to be honest. And I was looking down the record of I was thinking, has Masvidal ever really sort of got over that nearly guy? He's nearly got the title shot, or he nearly won the belt, and he hasn't. I was looking down his record. He lost to Damian Maia. He's on a 3-fight win streak, and then lost to a grappler in Damian Maia. Then he lost to a striker in Stephen Thompson. So where does he sort of, he's not an elite grappler, he's not an elite striker. Then he took all that time off. He beat Darren Till, and then he was preparing for another grappler in Ben Askren.
sure.
Then he was preparing with someone with an elite ground game like Nate Diaz. Then he was preparing, well, I mean, he didn't have much time to prepare, but he knew that he'd be wrestling against Kamaru Usman. Then he was preparing for another wrestler, Kamaru Usman again, after being wrestled the first time. He was probably preparing for a wrestling sort of attack from Kamaru Usman, which happened in that first round of that rematch.
Yeah.
Then he was preparing for a wrestling in Colby Covington. He's only prepared for grapplers in his last 3 fights since, realistically, since the start of 2021, he's only prepared for grapplers. So in theory, he should be pretty well prepared for Gilbert Burns. What I think is bad for Jorge Masvidal is this is a 3-round fight, which is pretty much for these guys that are used to 5-round fights. This is a sprint,
Yeah,
and
true.
we know that Gilbert can work very hard for 15 minutes, like we saw against Hamzat, like we saw against Neil Magny. Not so much because he, the kind of overhand to a body lock to an arm triangle choke, finished in under a round. But I just don't see how Jorge gets it done, which is a shame because it's in Miami, and I think he's already sort of mentally maybe checked out of this one.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, I watched bits and bobs of the Joe Rogan podcast with Jorge, and he said, look, it's nice. I can walk in, I can wake up in my own bed, and I can drive over to the arena, which is maybe that's a massive factor. He can cut weight at his own home if he wants to." But does that lead to him getting sort of too comfortable? Is he fully focused on kind of fight week? If you're not in the fighter hotel, if you're not cutting weight in a shitty hotel room, if you're not, walking downstairs to weigh-ins rather than, you're driving from your own house to the weigh-ins.
Mhm.
He also said, this could be my last fight. If I lose to Gilbert, it could be my last fight. Well, I don't think Israel Adesanya is thinking, oh, if I lose to Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya is thinking, what's next when I beat Alex Pereira?
Mhm.
Gilbert Burns isn't thinking, well, if I lose to Jorge, I'll take a step down in the rankings. Gilbert Burns thinking, when I beat Jorge,
Yeah.
I'll be next in line for a title shot. Kind of that kind of mentality, rather than, well, if I lose to Gilbert, there's a chance that I retire from this one. And I just think wherever the fight goes, Gilbert is, maybe he's not better on the feet because Jorge Masvidal sets very good traps, but
Yeah.
Masvidal can't throw his body kicks in this one because Gilbert will catch him and take him down. Masvidal can't do his blitz attacks because there's a chance that Gilbert kind of just ducks underneath and pulls a double leg and takes him down.
Yeah.
I think if Jorge's going to have any success in this one, I think he's got to be a little bit like he did against Nate Diaz in, I think it was the first round or the second round of their fight when he got dirty in the clinch. He was rabid in trying to get out of the clinch with Nate Diaz. He was throwing elbows, he was throwing knees, he was throwing kicks, he was throwing elbow, like he was just hitting Nate with forearms and shoulders and maybe a little bit of a head clash. You've got to make this one quite dirty, I think, to keep Gilbert Burns off him, to keep really drive the elbows in, try and cut Gilbert Burns. When he's on his back, he can't settle for being on his back, which is often what we see with Jorge.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be brutal in getting up. He's got to maybe land a kick to the downed opponent, frustrate Gilbert so that he leaves those openings for Jorge. I have no doubt in my mind that Jorge will be taken down in this one by Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert will dominate him for at least 3 to 4 minutes of a round.
Yeah. Yeah,
How does
completely
how
agree.
does how does Jorge react to that? I'm not so sure, but I'm excited for it. It's two top, well, one top welterweight and Jorge Masvidal that's on the way down. But I'm excited for it. I don't know how it's going to play out specifically, but I do see I do see Gilbert getting his hand raised at the end of this fight.
I think it would be wise. I agree with you completely, Gilbert fight, but I think business wise, I think it would be wise, win or lose, Jorge Masvidal should retire because on a win, that's very good. You retired in Miami and it's a really cool moment. That's amazing. But if you lose, definitely retire because your career is not going to get any better. The only way is for him is down, and he's only going to lower his stock by taking more fights because there's not a lot of people in the top 15 that he can beat right now. So, but I think if he retires, even on a loss, he can still go out and have the tequila business. He can still go out and do all the commercials and stuff like that. He's still a good name and he can still make a name for himself. But I think continuing fighting is not the career forward. I think win or lose is Jorge's last fight.
Yeah, I think maybe win he calls out Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
And maybe that fight's made.
Yeah.
It's a bad fight for him. I think Leon dominates him.
Oh, of course.
But again, we're talking about. I think with a loss, he's not the kind of guy that I feel is. I'm going to have just one more fight and I'll go out on a win because I'm looking down the rankings now.
Who's he beat?
I was
Who's he beat? Neil Magny runs game over at this point.
I mean, Michel Pereira at number 15, obviously exclusive from our own Nate Freeman, that he'll be fighting Stephen Thompson next. I don't think he beats Michel Pereira.
No, I don't think
he
so.
Definitely doesn't beat Jack Della Maddalena.
No, I don't think so.
Michael Chiesa's a tough fight for him. Neil Magny, like you say, beats him. Vicente Luque beats him.
Yeah.
Sean Brady maybe doesn't beat him, but that's only if he can keep the wrestling of Sean Brady off. Jeff Neal beats him. Obviously, Stephen Thompson beats him.
Yeah.
And then you get in Shavkat, Bilal Muhammad, Hamzat, Colby, Kamaru, and Leon.
He's just not. Yeah, it's just
McGregor, maybe, maybe as a last real fight. But, let's be honest. If he is to face McGregor, that won't happen for at least another year. McGregor's not returning until November.
Yeah.
Let's say he gets beat up a bit in that fight. He's having another 6 months off. That's not happening until at least this time last year. It all depends how Jorge looks this weekend. If he ekes out a split decision loss, or if he looks really good against Gilbert, but does end up, getting caught with something, who knows? But I think for Jorge, I think it's dominant loss and retire.
Oh.
I can't see him dominate. I don't think he'll dominate Burns, but with a win, he maybe calls out Leon, and with a close loss, he says, "Look, McGregor, sort your shit out with Chandler, and then we'll go." I think that's the only three sort of paths for Jorge at this point. But like you say, he's got the whiskey business. He's still a big name. He's got his own promotion, Game Bred Fight, and he does a little bit of, I think bare knuckle MMA,
something like that
under Game Bred Fight. So he's got avenues. He's got ventures out of the UFC. I can't see him joining Bellator or joining the PFL.
I don't think so.
I think once he retires from the UFC, he's retired from MMA, as it were.
Yeah, no, he's got a good avenue of making money at this point. Let's break down the bantamweight banger Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. From watching tape, I was almost trying to find the path for Adrian Yanez, but having watched his bout against Randy Costa. Randy Costa was an orthodox striker who landed 8,000 jabs in the first round with no resistance. I have to think if Randy Costa can jab up Adrian Yanez, Rob Font can absolutely jab up Adrian Yanez. I think this is actually a very easy fight, and this is based on the research, based on tape study. I think Rob Font wins this all day long. Right? Am I wrong?
I'd probably pick Adrian Yanez going into this one,
Okay,
which is
fine. You
which
can
is
be wrong. You can
you
be
know
wrong.
no, I don't. This is one, but I say that, and on Friday when our picks go in, I'll probably pick Rob Font.
No.
This has got fight of the night written all over it. I
Yeah.
kind of side with Rob Font because we share a birthday. I've just realised, so I'm Team Rob Font now. But let's not forget, where is Rob Font in his career?
Yeah.
Dominated Cody Garbrandt, knocked out Marlon Moraes, beat Ricky Simone, which is no easy task. Beat
Yeah.
Sergio Pettis back in 2018,
Yeah.
but then lost to Jose Aldo. I mean, there's that's not a bad thing to happen to you. Then he was dominated badly by Marlon Vera, but again,
Yeah.
kind of who doesn't be dominated by Marlon Vera, not named Corey Sandhagen or Jose Aldo? But I completely agree with you that for Rob Font, his output in yes, it was across 5 rounds, so it's slightly different. But his output against Marlon Vera, he threw 520 strikes, landed 273 strikes in
Incredible.
the
Oh my God.
in the first 3 rounds. So his fight with Adrian Yanez is a 3-round fight. He threw almost over 300 strikes in the first 3 rounds. I think Adrian Yanez is a phenomenal talent, really,
Yes.
really good.
Yes.
5 UFC fights, um, 5 UFC fights, 5 performances of the night, 4 finishes, split decision against our own David Grant.
Yes.
Last time out, I think the step up in class from Tony Kelly, who is now cut from the UFC, who no one remembers. The only thing you remember Tony Kelly for is racial slurs whilst in the corner of Andrea
Well,
Lee.
that's right, dude.
Exactly. You don't even remember Tony Kelly, and the
No.
step up in class from Tony Kelly to Rob Font is huge. I see this one playing out on the feet, but completely completely agreeing with what you say. He lands 6.62 strikes per minute, but he absorbs 5.49. Rob Font, he's got a 1 inch height and a 1 inch reach advantage, but I think he fights a lot longer than Yanez. Yanez likes to get his opponents up against the cage, rip to the body, rip to the head with the hooks. I can't see Rob Font getting into a situation where he does sort of collapse up against the fence and allows Yanez to land on him. I've got a
Yeah.
piece coming out looking at it. It kind of airs on the side of Yanez winning this one.
Awesome.
But on reflection, I do think Rob Font is, he's the more active striker. I think he fights longer than Yanez. So if you can keep him on the end of that jab, throw the odd teep kick to the body. I don't see any of these guys mixing in takedowns, despite the fact that Rob Font averages a takedown per 15 minutes. I don't see him mixing in the takedowns, but he could. If that's a thing that he thinks Yanez won't expect, maybe he does. For 2 rounds, jab his head off when Yanez is chasing a knockout. Maybe he does then snatch a double. I think it's got fight of the night written all over it. I'm really excited for it, but it's a lot closer, I think, than it maybe the form suggests. Rob Font coming off 2 losses, Adrian Yanez coming off 5 wins in the UFC. But it's just there's Adrian Yanez, like I say, he's got wins over. I mean, split decision over David Grant, a win over Randy Costa, a win over Tony Kelly. Rob Font's last 3 fights: Marlon Vera, 25 minutes; Jose Aldo, 25 minutes; Cody Garbrandt, 25 minutes. These are elite guys. And then Marlon Moraes, Ricky Simone, Sergio Pettis, Asun Sao, Thomas Almeida, Pedro Munoz, Douglas Silva de Andrade, Match now, John Lineker. I mean,
It's what a lineup. What a
I
quality
didn't
lineup.
quite realize. Yeah, I've just gone down these guys. Wow. I mean, he's got such an experience advantage over Adrian Yanez, but could we see this as a sort of changing of the guard?
Yeah.
Who knows? But it's an exciting, like I say, fight of the night written all over it.
Oh yeah, co-sign with you. It's going to be a banger either way. Speaking of no takedowns, how about Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio? We're talking. This might be fight of the night right here. This is a back and forth banger. And honestly, I mean, I think both guys at this stage in their career know that they're probably not fighting for a title in the future. I think this is just going to be the fun fight collection that these two have in the welterweight division going forward, right? Like, I don't. What do you see in it though?
There's no sort of title, or I don't even think any of these guys are ranked at
Yeah.
welterweight. No, they're not. So they're not ranked at welterweight. But I just think, why not? Two guys who have got a styles that will match.
Yep.
Yeah, they're active strikers. Both of them have got a different sort of striking style. Let's not forget Santiago Ponzinibbio did win his last one against Alex Morono, but I think he was pretty badly losing that one before he caught Morono.
Mm.
And Kevin Holland's coming off the Stephen Thompson Hamzat Chimaev fights. Holland's definitely fought the better guys across his career, but like I say, this is just a fun fight. No takedowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it hits the ground due to a knockdown, I think Kevin Holland is the more elite guy on the ground. I think he's a black belt in BJJ, but
Yeah.
it's just a fun fight. I love this kind of fight. It's just a fun fight with no real implications. If one guy loses, so what? If the other guy loses, so what?
Yeah.
It's one of those as well where, I'll probably, I'm picking Kevin Holland because I think he's had the better experience. He's been the more active guy, and I think he finds his range a lot quicker than Ponzinibbio does.
Yes.
But if Ponzinibbio wins, I'm not going to be gutted. It's a fun stand-up fight. Sign me up.
Yes. No, Kevin Holland's a very good striker. Raul Rosas Jr. coming back to beat some guy. I'll give him the some guy treatment. He's fighting some guy. Can we add any more analysis than that on it to it?
1-on-1 in the UFC. I mean, he's got an anaconda choke, so he's clearly competent on the ground. But I just think, it's a bit of a setup for Raul Rosas Jr. He's got a 4-inch reach disadvantage, but he's got a 2-inch height advantage. It kind of negates that reach. Both of these guys are younger than me, which is nice.
Sucks to see, doesn't it? How about the fight night main event between Chris Curtis and Kelvin Gastelum? I can't believe this isn't a fight night main event. Great fight here. Kelvin Gastelum really just all over the place in terms of where his career trajectory has been, from being the promised guy to being the incredible prospect with notable wins over like Michael Bisping, had wars against Israel Adesanya, to never really living up to his hype. He's going to be fighting the action man Chris Curtis, who's got some good wins. Overall, very good fighter, and I think this is a really fun fight in all honesty, but unfortunately, are we going to be sad coming away from this fight?
I don't, I don't know what to think about this fight. I'm just looking down Calvin Gastelum's record. He's got one win since 2019. He lost to Izzy, obviously the unanimous decision fight of the year, hurt Izzy and everything. That was a great fight. Then he lost to Darren Till. Then he lost to Jack Manson. Then he bounced back against Ian Heinisch, but then he lost to Whitaker. Then he lost to Jared Cannonier.
No shame in those top contenders.
Oh no, top guys. But then he's had 3 cancelled fights. Yeah. If you remember the Imanov fight at the beginning of this year, got cancelled. The first fight of the year, I should say, got cancelled during fight week, and it was moved up to 205, and Sean Strickland stepped in. Mm-hmm. Now he faces Chris Curtis. He's definitely a step down in competition, but I mean, it's not exactly like a huge step down in competition. Chris Curtis is still ranked number 14.
Yeah.
This is number 14 versus number 15. Chris Curtis, after he lost in London to Jack Manson, but he's coming off the back of a pretty brutal knockout of Joaquin Buckley.
Yeah,
it's a tough fight for Adesanya, who hasn't fought since August 2021. So he's best part of a year and a half off.
Yeah,
it's a tough fight to come back for. And are any of these guys ever going to compete for the middleweight title? Absolutely not. Is maybe 7th, 8th their absolute ceiling? Quite possibly. Yeah. Is it a fun fight? Definitely.
Yes.
So this is UFC 287 it's shaping up to be a really fun card. Yeah. If you like elite strikers, and if you don't like a lot of wrestling, this is the card for you. You got Bahamundez on the prelims, phenomenal striker.
Always brings it.
You've got Lupi Godinez, who although she's a wrestler, she's an exciting wrestler. She picks girls up and just absolutely dumps them down, and they get back to their feet, and she picks them up again, and she dumps them down and gets them. They get back to their feet, and she picks them up again and dumps them down. You've got Chase Sherman on the card, gutted about this one because he was meant to be facing Chris Barnett. Obviously, Chris Barnett's had to pull out for whatever reason. I think I'm not sure, maybe an injury, but he's Chase Sherman doesn't know how to fight. Boring. He doesn't know how to take a backward step. He'll just put his chin out there. If he catches you, you go out. If you catch him, he probably goes out. Really fun card. And you got Michelle Waterson Gomez, who at one point was a top prospect. It's never fitted in the UFC because she was a natural atom weight.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she faces Luana Pinheiro.
Undefeated in
I
the UFC, but yeah.
butchered the name, but undefeated in the UFC. Hasn't lost since 2017. That was a split decision loss. You know, it's looking like a really fun fight night card. Sorry, really fun pay-per-view card. Like I say, if you like strikers, this is the card for you. Definitely, definitely sort of get on this card because it's a fun one. It's a really fun one.
Yep. I'll co-sign with you there. It's going to be a fun one up and down. I mean, we covered everything there. I don't have anything else to add. Talk us. What else you got writing out this week? Any articles to? I mean, you mentioned the one article. I put the links down below. But what else you got going on?
Yeah, so I've got three out coming out this week. I've got a Jorge Masvidal piece where explaining how he's in desperate need for a win. I've got an Adrian Yanez piece, and I've of course got the sort of main event preview. And I might do a little bit of a preview on the PFL. We've got Aspen Ladd making her debut. We've got Larissa Pacheco making the first defense of her. Well, it's not technically the first defense, but we got she's the defending champion going into Pacheco versus Julia Budd. And it's just, again, it's just a solid card from top to bottom. Amber Leibrook makes her PFL debut. Maurice Green's on the card. Plenty of recognizable names. And Baggio Ali Walsh, makes his his second PFL appearance on this card. So, tune into the PFL, but it's all UFC 287 this week.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I even checked the other sports to see what was going on, and it's a UFC weekend through and through.
It's a UFC weekend.
All right, well, Frazer, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for breaking down UFC 287. Best of luck this week, and we'll talk to you later, eh?
See you later. Cheers.